If you're like me, you'll enjoy playing career mode in a realistic way, but you might also be wanting to find some tips to keep it fun while also having some realism. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 of my favourite tips that I found over the years of playing realistic career modes to keep the game a lot more fun. If you've got any of your own, make sure you leave them in the comments and subscribe if you want to see more FIFA 23 content. My first tip actually comes from something that I learnt the hard way on last year's FIFA career mode save I uploaded to this channel. When I was playing as Nottingham Forest, I had a really good first season. I got promoted out of the Championship, and in my second season I was in the Premier League. Before the season started, I did some streams where we decided who we were going to sign, but I made the mistake of signing way too many players. I let basically my original squad who got me promoted go, and because of this I had no chemistry with the team. I didn't really enjoy the save after this point. A lot of the players had changed, all the ones that I really enjoyed using were no longer in my team. Sure, you could probably say this is realistic because in real life Forest did sign 22 new players and are currently second bottom of the league. But you can see the examples of this all over the world. For example, Leicester and Sunderland both signed 200 players between 2003 and 2016. As soon as Leicester stopped signing players, they managed to get promoted, and then they managed to win the league. Sunderland didn't stop signing players, and they just kept going down every single year. So if you want to keep it realistic and keep it fun, maybe limit yourself to 2 to 3 starters per season, maybe with a few prospects here and there who can eventually develop into first team players. I see it all the time that lots of people will reduce the squad down to the bare minimum of 18 players. Maybe just keep the originals as squad filler if you are going to sign a lot of new players. One place that you can sign a lot of players and keep it fairly realistic is your youth academy, but don't try and use youth academies that are maybe higher than your team's star rating if you want to keep it realistic. Just to keep it a bit more fun and a bit more challenging, I always try and keep only 1 or 2 players per position. For example, my youth academy, I don't like having 5 left wingers while I've got no right wingers. So what I do is a lot of retraining to make sure I have at least 1 player in every position, but no more than 2 in every position. You should always try and scout countries that are nearby to where your club plays. For example, if you're playing up north in England, somewhere like Newcastle or Sunderland, it would probably be a bit more realistic that you send your scout to Scotland instead of Wales. Whereas if you're playing somewhere like Birmingham, maybe Wales or Ireland is the better place for your team to go. These kind of little changes can make basically every single save you do a little bit different, and that does help keep the game a lot more fun. Neighbouring countries is another good place to scout, so if you're playing in Germany, maybe scout Austria, Poland, Czech Republic, Belgium, Holland. There's so many different countries you can scout. Just keep mixing it up, and then you won't get the same issue that's always been on FIFA, where you get 10 youth players and they've all got the same surname. 1 or 2 maybe you can justify as brothers, but I doubt there's many families of 10 where they're all professional pros. So now you know what you're going to do with your youth academy and your initial squad. Let's talk about buying players. One thing I always like to do is fully scout a player before signing them. You know that little scout report you get where it says your overall rating and then you've got their defending, their physicals, their passing, that kind of thing. If you don't actually look at their real stats and just use that little guide, that can be a super cool and unique way of actually looking at a player. You can see that this player is really physical from your scout report, but if you don't actually look at their stats, you won't know if they're really physical because of strength, maybe jumping, maybe their stamina is really high. This makes you have to learn a little bit more about the player. You can know they're really strong from their physicality stat, but maybe you don't know what they're strong with. The same with acceleration and pace. You could buy a winger, you're into really fast players, but this guy's just got insane acceleration and very average pace. If you don't actually look at the stats, then you can have to actually learn a little bit about the player by playing them, which I do enjoy a lot more. When you're actually buying your player, don't buy players that are maybe more than 1 or 2 overall higher than your current best player. This rarely happens anywhere in the world. If you are going to do it, maybe have a look and see if you can get an old player who's returning to their former club. If you take a Sunderland example, maybe you get promoted in the first season and you need a new midfielder. Your current average overall is about 75, and you can see there's an 81 rated Jordan Henderson or Jordan Pickford that would be willing to join your club. I think either of these rejoining Sunderland if they get promoted and maybe Liverpool have got a different midfielder could be a realistic option despite them being like 6 overall higher than your current best player. It's very rare, but this kind of thing does happen in real life. Similarly, if you want to do a short loan of a player from the division above, they can probably be higher overall, because you do see this. For example, when Tammy Abraham went to Bristol City, he had no link to that club, but he was miles better than any other striker in the league for the year that he played for Bristol City. So to summarise the rule of buying players, if your average overall is 66, don't go higher than 68. The only exception could be players over 30, but I'll leave that up to you if you want to try and add a little second rule to this. With selling players, it can be important that you don't reject unrealistic options. So for example, if you're playing in Serie B or the Championship and you get an offer from someone like Spurs and you're trying to keep your save realistic, there's basically no way that a team would reject a Spurs bid, because the player would instantly go on strike and just refuse to train and not show up and play very well. If you're getting a massive offer from a better team, maybe you're playing in League One and you get an offer from someone at the top of the Championship, again, you should really consider and see if you can figure out if this would be a realistic option to accept. Most of the time, if an offer comes in from a team that is better than yours, the club would in real life accept. So that's just a general rule if you can't figure out exactly what's realistic. If you're trying to keep your entire squad realistic, which can possibly be the hardest part, but it's a little bit easier since the dynamic potential nerf on FIFA 23, you shouldn't sign players that are massively better than your existing young players. For example, if your squad has a 65 overall youth player and he's your highest potential player under 20, you shouldn't really be signing players who are maybe 75 overall and a bit younger, because not only are they starting off 10 overall better, but you're also never going to actually play the real youth player that you have. Of course, if you're playing in a very good league, for example the Premier League, someone who's 65 overall is probably not actually going to develop into a Premier League player on this year's FIFA. It's very difficult to get a player to grow more than 3 or 4 points, so if you're trying to get the 20 to 25 that would make him a Premier League player, you're going to really struggle if you're going to do that over a short career mode save. You might have to do a really long one, so signing a better player in this situation probably is realistic. Try to keep training to only players who aren't in your starting 11, especially young players, because otherwise they don't really develop fast enough on this year's game, unfortunately. This does also help with sharpness, because players who play get max sharpness from playing the matches, and players who aren't playing get it from training. So training is very important to keeping your save realistic. Another last thing you can do with training is only train certain parts of your players' games. If you can be bothered to go into training every single week and make sure that if you're playing as a tiki-taka team, your team players are all developing their passing, dribbling and stamina, that could be a realistic way of doing training. If you're playing a counter-attack team, maybe get a lot of strength, pace and finishing, because they're all really important to the way you play. This makes your players develop in a realistic way that fits your club, and again, that can be a fun way to play FIFA. My final tip revolves around limiting the end of contract players that you sign. This year, the AI is extra stupid when it comes to renewing their players. Quite often, you'll see 85 plus rated players chilling out in the free agents for over a season on FIFA 23. Of course, you can sign these at basically any club. With the way that the transfer budget now works, with it being the wage budget and the transfer budget are all merged into one thing, it can be quite difficult for you to resist. If you're in the Championship, you'll have that £200,000 a week that David De Gea wants. Of course, David De Gea would never move to the Championship, but no other good team will actually ever offer him a deal on FIFA 23. This kind of thing is quite crazy, because you can find world-class players for no fee, and also, unlike real life, they won't ask for insane wages. In real life, free transfers usually cost a similar amount to actual transfers, because the signing on fee, instead of going to the club as a transfer fee, will just go straight to the player. You can look at my team, Nottingham Forest, signing Jesse Lingard. In real life, he's probably worth around £10 million at the end of last season. But instead, what Forest did was they paid him £6 million in wages and just straight up gave him £4 million to sign for Nottingham Forest. While this is overall a slight bit cheaper because the wages are included, it didn't actually save Forest that much by signing a good player on a free transfer. This isn't reflected in FIFA, so if you are doing free transfers, maybe always offer them a little bit more money than you normally would, because that's the realistic choice. If you've got any suggestions for other ideas or other ways you keep your save realistic, please let me know in the comments below. But like I said at the start, subscribe if you want to see more like this, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you very soon for another video. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.